The Fire Store, equipping protectors with passion. Every decision the Fire Store makes as a company is about its customers. As the holiday season has quickly approached, explore a wide selection of unique and practical gifts at the Fire Store's Gift Center. Find the perfect presents for firefighters, EMTs, and first responders today. The Fire Store's goal is to get you the gear you need when you need it at prices you can afford. Visit thefirestore.com for everything but the truck and shop its family of brands including Streamlight, MSA, Lion, Fleer, and more.
Hey, welcome to the November edition of Fireground Strategies and Other Stuff from the Street on Fire Engineering Talk Radio with Jim Duffy and Chief Anthony Avillo. Hello, brother.
What's happening, my friend?
Oh,
my grandbrother.
We're gonna bullshit like we usually do. We only talked 5 minutes ago what we were going to talk about tonight, and I think it's a relevant subject. We're going to talk about all things training and teaching. We're going to go all over the place. How to begin, how to control your ego, and things like that. But first, Chief Avillo, I'd like to ask you about the high-rise conference you were at yesterday. That's a big deal. Some great speakers you had the opportunity to join.
Yeah, well, I didn't speak. It was
I know that
right by it was right by New York City Fire Headquarters. It was the Metro Center in Brooklyn, and I went over there with some of the guys I taught with at the Fire Academy. We were invited by Jack Murphy, and I mean, you were invited too. I thought you were coming, but I guess not. But it was they do it every year. It's the 35th year. It's the New York City, the fire safety managers program, and in the high rises, and they do it's basically like the FDNY sort of telling these sort of high rise people that run the high rise programs, like what it is that we need, what it is that we do, how can you help us, how can we help you, type of thing, and they had some great speakers. They had Steve Marcer was on, and he was on with a captain, which I don't remember his name. Steve Marcer, he teaches at the FDIC. He did a really good program, and they had this younger kid on that did something about like the refrigeration systems and the HVAC systems and all the different coolants that they use and different the toxicity of these things, and some of them are flammable, some of them are explosive, and you get a leak in one of your chiller units. First of all, where is the chiller unit? What's actually leaking? What are the problems that it can cause? He was a young kid too. He just got promoted to lieutenant, and he did a really nice job. And then it was master of ceremonies was Jack Murphy, who is like the head of the fire safety managers in the city. Fire safety, I forget, FDSM. I'm drawing a blank on the exact name of it, but it's the fire safety managers in the high rises. Each high rise has a fire safety manager, and what they were trying to do is impress on them to know your building so intimately that you can be an asset to the fire department when you come in there, because there's so many high rises, and the fire safety director in these buildings can, be an absolute, unbelievably resource for the fire department looking for information. And so it was really good. And the last speaker was, of course, another one of our grandbrothers, Jerry Tracy. And Jerry Tracy did a class that is all about what's going on in these buildings now. What can we expect in the future? The artificial intelligence, the intelligent building, the things that are in place in these buildings and will be going into place in these buildings as we move into the future that can create some major problems for the fire department. And again, the knowledge and experience and resourcefulness of the fire safety directors is going to, allow it to be, not a nightmare for the fire department or the people that live in there. It was a really good program. And, you talk about teaching. Jerry Tracy is like one of the best, man. He's so passionate. He is so on his game. And they have the book out, the high rise firefighting book, the vertical environment. And, there was a guy there from Toronto. He didn't speak, but he was there. He redid like the entire fire safety and high rise program, the Toronto Fire Department. He was there. I think it was Brent Brooks. But it was a really, really, I hadn't been there in a few years, and it was really cool because, for some of these guys in Manhattan, like, they're, I hate to say it, their bread and butter is the high rise building, whereas, for you and me, that's not our bread and butter. That's more of our, high risk, low frequency, and, if this is what you have in your jurisdiction, just like any building, whatever you have to be an expert at. And Jerry Tracy came across really well. He uses metaphors, and he's funny, and he wrote the forward actually of the 4th edition of Fireground Strategies, which will be coming out. So I owe him a debt of gratitude for that. But it was a really good conference, and I was glad to have been invited there.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad to hear. A friend of mine from my volunteer days way back when. He's a safety manager for a group of high rises in Manhattan. It's a private job, and he has to do the fire drills in these high rise apartment buildings. And, the people don't want to, why we did this a couple of years ago. Why do we have to do this? Why do we have to do that? Mm-hmm. And then, the building super, sometimes is not cooperative, it's going to cost money and, all those things. And you brought up the high rises, actually, the conference did yesterday. But the FAR system is the way of the future. Mm-hmm. It's probably going to be 100 years before that's adapted everywhere. But newer buildings, I think it's an incredible idea. Mm-hmm. I think it'll make firefighters safety. It'll make the people who live there safer, because the firefighters will be more efficient instead of carrying up dozens and dozens of bottles up to the 34th floor or the 60th floor. There's going to be a standpipe with breathing air in it. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great idea. I don't know that much about it, but I do believe that it's the future. Well, I really do.
It's like an air standpipe, and they were there, actually. The people that were, the FARS people were there yesterday. It's like a air standpipe. The thing is, though, and to put it in is only like pennies on the dollar for the builder.
Yeah.
But I believe the way it runs and the way it is it has to be adopted by a city ordinance. So I believe like Sacramento has it. I think Oakland has it. There's a bunch of places out west that have it. Trying to think of who.
Couple down south too.
Yeah, like Southwest too. I think Texas. But I had thought some of the East Coast departments were going to embrace it, and I guess they haven't yet. I can't understand why. You would think that if it's penny on a dollar and you're going to, the builder is going to be absorbing that cost, he's just going to add that onto the rent or whatever else it happens to be. And, if you go into a place like, North Hudson or a lot of these places, they're giving these builders like, tax breaks for like, 25 years, and, so. I don't see any reason why they're not doing this.
The builder's lobby is so strong.
Yeah.
Same thing with residential sprinklers. They don't want to absorb the cost of that. Mm-hmm. They don't want to. You know what? Like you said, you pass it on. When you're building a new building, the cost is next to nothing, especially in residential sprinklers. It costs nothing. Now, for me to retrofit my house would cost a fortune.
Right.
But if you're building a new house, platform construction, boom, 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 the sprinklers are in. And I think I can only guess it's the same with the FAR system. While you're building it, you're running a standpipe. Right next to the standpipe, you run your hose and you're good to go.
Yeah, it's just going to be PVC. I mean, I'm sure there is additional equipment, and it probably has to be tested every year or so to be certified and everything. But and what's the other interesting thing about it is you can put it in your vertical high rise. You can put it in a warehouse. You can put it in a tunnel.
Yep.
Like why couldn't the Lincoln Tunnel have something like that?
Yep.
Or a big long 1,000,000 square foot Amazon warehouse. Because there are fire areas, like fire separations in there, and you just put them on different ends, different sections of the fire separation, and now you don't got to bring all them bottles inside. Unfortunately,
Yep.
what happens is we don't get cooperation from the people we're trying to protect.
Exactly. But again, the builders, they're in business, to build a building, get paid for it, and move on to the next one.
Right.
They're not going to end up being the owners in the future. So get it done, move on, and don't add an extra cost. Yeah, don't add an extra cost to my proposal. I don't know what else to call it. The bid process.
Yeah.
Oh, now there's another thing, and then the cost of the building gets prohibitive for the spec guy who wants to make money renting the apartments out or the offices out. So it's tough, and it's everything. I'm going to talk about Long Island a little bit. The town I grew up in, they built 2 10-story buildings. Now they're planning on putting 2 11-story buildings in. It's protected by an all-volunteer department. And I look at that, and you know what? They do a great job, but it's crazy. And they give these people tax write-offs for so many years, and the zoning and the codes and all that become a nightmare. It just was a small little village. Now it's a small little city, and it's people aren't looking at, what those buildings are going to be like 20 years from now, 50 years from now, and things like that.
And at least they're sprinkled. A lot of our residential high rises in North Hudson are not sprinkled. In fact, most of them are not sprinkled. And
I bet a lot of them don't even have standpipes.
They do. Yeah.
They all do?
They all have standpipes, but most of the older ones don't have sprinklers. It just wasn't part of the game back then, I guess. The new ones do.
Yep.
But the old ones don't have them.
Wow.
Just don't have them. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's the upgraded mill buildings that they compartmentized to make apartments out of. So they were old, heavy timber mill buildings, and now they put sheetrock walls up, and they only have the sprinklers in the hallways. The apartments aren't sprinkled and things like that, even though they're only 5, 6, maybe at the most 7 stories. But they've changed how the building was built, and how you have to fight fires. I mean, a mill building, we all think, oh, this is no problem. This isn't going to fall on my head. This isn't going to, there's no, but now it's not what they built in the 1890s and the 1900s. They're just a whole different animal. And we have to pay attention to that. So anyway, let's get to our subject. Like I said at the beginning, at the intro, we're going to talk about all things training and teaching, and what we should be thinking about, whether we're hiring an instructor or assigning our people to teach the on-duty shifts, or in a volunteer house on a Monday night or Sunday morning, whenever they do the training. The people you assign to teach, I know if you're a certified Fire 1, you can teach any class that you're certified in. But as a chief of a department, you need to make sure that they are proficient in the skill they're teaching. Example, I was a suburban firefighter. Biggest building I ever fought a fire in was 7 or 8 stories. I don't remember. But most of our stuff is, taxpayers, commercial buildings, and private dwelling fires. Now, I've made it a business talking about private dwelling fires and house fires, 1 and 2 story. I'm not going to go out and teach high-rise fires. My credibility, first of all, is not that great in it because it's not what I did. It also, I'm not good at it. Get somebody to come in who knows high rises. If you have new high rises being built in your district, or you have several high rises, don't bring Jim Duffy. That's not my expertise. Although I can talk about what I learned in a class I took. It certainly doesn't make me an expert or good at sharing my knowledge, because my knowledge is all secondhand. And all of our knowledge is secondhand initially. But as time goes on, we need to get better, especially if we're standing with impressionable students to listen and learn from you. Chief Avillo, you do agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the word, you that came to my head as soon as you started talking about what we were talking about is consistency. I think you need, like on a department, I think you need consistency across your shifts. You don't want to have one shift learning it one way and another shift learning it another way, and then another shift learning it even a third way. I think you have to set expectations with your instructors, um, with a consistent sort of message. And I think that could be based on mutually created lesson plan, um, use of across the board use of of course there's 8,000 billion media resources out there that you might want to look at. I remember being in a classroom session one time, and the instructor showed us a video, and it had nothing to do with what he was talking about. So I think the most important thing is planning, and planning creates consistency across the board on your department. Um, if you're not putting a consistent message out there, then you're not going to have a department that works as sort of one unit. And we all know 4 shifts is 4 shifts, but you everybody's got consistency, and you want to sort of create that consistency through your training.
That's true in the messages that you're delivering when you're doing an oral presentation, a classroom lesson. We learn the basics in the classroom, but then we have to move on to do the hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I went to the Fire Academy in Connecticut, not what I did on, there were instructors from New Haven teaching ladders, and the next day there were instructors from Hartford teaching ladders. And let me tell you, it was a nightmare, because I had a little experience when I came here. So it's not like that now. They have a consistent message, much like what you said. But I remember getting yelled at by one instructor that the other instructor taught me yesterday. And when you're in the academy, you do what you're told.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? You don't dig from your experience or anything like that. You do as you're told. So I think it was the way we were footing the ladder. And I got screamed at by instructor the second day we were doing ladders. And well, Lieutenant so-and-so told me yesterday, this is the way that we're expected to do it. So that makes it difficult for the student.
Mm.
And I think it's definitely gone away in Connecticut, but I'm sure that happens in a lot of places, like you said, shift to shift, or, a small town has 2 separate volunteer companies, one on one side of the tracks and one on the other side of the tracks. And the officers could be teaching 2 totally different ways to do things, but you end up working at the same fire.
Yeah.
And
I saw a lot of that when I was at the Fire Academy. I worked at 2 different fire academies, and I, when I got to Monmouth, the second one, I tried, bought some of the things that I had learned at Bergen down in Monmouth, which they had never used, such as the click system was one of them. But there were also things in Bergen that I learned that ran contrary to things I learned in Weehawken, in my own department, and then there were things that I learned in Monmouth that ran contrary to things that had gone on in Bergen. For instance, one of the most common ones is where do you foot the ladder from? Some in Bergen, we foot the ladder from behind. In Weehawken, we foot the ladder from behind. In Monmouth, they foot it from in front. And I never had done that, and quite honestly, I'm not a big fan of it. But I get it; it works. It was one of those things where you see it a couple different ways, because it's not even consistent. It's not consistent even on the departments across the county, because some kids will tell us, well, we learn it this way in our department. Other kids will say we learn it this way in our department, and either way, neither one is wrong. There's some pros and cons to both of them, but yeah, I think the message of consistency, and sometimes that's what happens. That happens a lot when we teach them at the fire academy, and then they go back to their department, and the department will tell them, no, well, this is the way we do it here, and that's okay. It's a way, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, and I'm not the one to even judge that until I see them come out on the fire ground and I see what they're doing, and ladders are raising upside down or whatever. But I think especially as a department or as an academy, if you're not consistent across the board with your teaching, you're just going to confuse the student, and then it compromises the I don't want to use the word integrity. That's not the right word. It compromises the perceived competence of the academy and effectiveness.
Yeah, you know what? That's really, really important, especially today. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm sure you have. There's a lot of this lateral hiring going on now. Departments are hiring people from Department A to work in Department B because they've already certified, and they don't have to put them through the academy, and they have to go through an abbreviated hiring process. I wouldn't call it a civil service process, but they'll take someone, and it's starting to become very common in Connecticut, and you see a lot of people transferring, getting hired down south until a job opens up in New York or up in Connecticut or New Jersey. They start down south somewhere where sometimes it's easy to get hired and they pay less, blah, blah, blah. But in Connecticut, you're starting to find people go to small departments that don't get a lot of action until another job opens up. So working 5 years, and I'm going to say Department A because I don't want to name names of departments, for 5 years, but now in a bigger city that they get more work and they don't have to do EMS is one example, and the pay is more. They're going to go across the board, but they've just spent 5 years learning how Department A throws ladders, mm-hmm. or how Department A packs hose. They use a Minuteman load and a pre-connect, and this other department uses a flat load that you have to break and connect. So the consistent you were talking about across the board in states, counties, et cetera, is really important. I know in St. Louis County in Missouri, the whole county has pretty much the same SOPs. Their arrival tasks are based on arrival because they're very big into quints. So, well, am I a quint or I'm an engine? Am I a truck or am I an engine? So what they've done is first, and I don't know what they do. First, it is an engine. Second, it acts as a search and forcible entry crew and ventilation crew. Third in does water supply. And I'm making up what the rules are, but everything is based on arrival order.
Right.
So you don't get two trucks showing up going, well, I want to be the truck today. No, I want to be it. It's first in does this, second in does this, third in does that, whether it's a mutual aid company or a department from your own city. I know it doesn't work 100%, but it's really a good baseline to start at. They all have the same playbook. Whether they're good at the playbook or not is another story.
Mm. Yeah. And the other thing is, your lessons and your lesson plan should be based around your SOPs, and you don't want to contradict your SOPs with the training that you're doing, and that's why if you have a good training division, they will be, they can, evaluate these things to say, wait a minute, this isn't what we're doing. We have to train this way. And then the other thing sometimes is you got to be careful about what people are teaching, often at the company level, because sometimes when they're teaching the company level and they don't agree with what's happening with the department, they begin to teach rogue activities. And, that sort of, is never in line with what, the incident command is expecting you to do one thing, and all of a sudden you're doing something else because your captain who heard this somewhere else out on the internet somewhere, or saw it in a class, and listen, it might have been really good, it might have been excellent, but you know what? Before you put that in place on your department, if it's going to run counter to what your department is doing, you got to let the people know, or at least, um, like submit something that so it can be evaluated. Say, oh yeah, okay, we can change, and we can use this as an alternative, or we can change to use this on our department. But don't just do it on your own, because what happens is you're upsetting the delicate balance of coordination on a fireground.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of that. I came from New York originally. We talk about this all the time. I got hired in Wallingford, Connecticut, and they had all fog nozzles and PDQs and task force tips, et cetera, et cetera. So, we used them. I mean, we had a smoothbore tucked away in a cabinet somewhere, but it never came out. So I got promoted to lieutenant. And I talked to the chief. I'd like to try the smoothbore, introducing the guys to the smoothbore. He goes, well, you can introduce, play with them, but this is still what we're going to do. So I went with my guys, went on a couple of overtime shifts, showed them how it works and the pluses and minuses of it. So after I was lieutenant for about a year, I went to the chief. I said, I really think we should put our first line of, and he said, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. And then I asked him again a couple months later. He says, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. As long as everybody on your engine is trained to use that nozzle and their pump operators are trained to understand the different flow rates and blah, 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 blah. He says, when you come on duty, you can take the smoothbore out, put it on your initial line, and at the end of your shift, it has to go back in the cabinet and you can replace it with the task force tip. So this went on for a little while. And I had a lieutenant from another shift on overtime, or I was on overtime. No, he had to be on overtime. We had a nasty, nasty fire. It had a rain roof, and the asphalt was in between, and it was just a nightmare. It was a big, big house, big old house. And he was one of the guys who was against it so much. He was so against it. They're stupid, they kink, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, after fire, he goes, hey, this thing's pretty cool. So he started on his shift. He asked the chief if he could do it. And he was told the same things, blah, 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 blah. As long as your pump operators understands about and right down the line. And then it started. And within a year of that became the initial attack line on all the engines in the city. And, but it was a long process. It was probably over 2 years to get it instigated. Mm-hmm. And in our private dwelling section, we used pre-connects. And we did the same thing with the Minuteman load for the private dwelling section. Because it's only 20 feet to the front door, and, the houses are 2 or 3 stories, 2.5 stories. So every shift had to pack and stretch in our training tower and come to a mutual agreement between the 4 shifts whether we were going to adopt this. But everybody had to try it and become proficient in its use. And it eventually became the rear pre-connect was a Minuteman load with 250 feet on it. Mm-hmm. And again, over a year to go through this process, and one captain was out of his mind about this, you new guys think you're running everything. I go, well, this actually came from the chief cap. He wanted us to do this, but whatever. But you have to make sure it gets absorbed and used, not just the knowledge, mm-hmm. but the practice. You got to do it. And again, you were a ladder man for a lot of years. Talking about throwing a 35-foot ladder is not the same as throwing a 35-foot ladder. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah.
Now, you may know how to do it, mm-hmm. but are you proficient?
Yeah, how quickly can you get that up there? You go back to the fire in Meriden, Connecticut, right? How quick can you get it up there? Yeah. How fast can you get it to the proper target? How fast can you get up that ladder? It's a function of how much you've trained with it, how much you know that piece of equipment, and ladders. And again, to me, ladders are one of those pieces of equipment that can make you look really stupid in front of a lot of people. And because most people know if you screw up a ladder operation, most people don't know if you screw up a hose line operation. You get firefighters know, but most civilians will not sort of know when you're wrestling with spaghetti in the front yard. Especially if you're not yelling and screaming, but a ground ladder, you drop it, you raise it upside down, you're extending it, it keeps dropping down, or you keep having to adjust it. That stuff's pretty evident,
It absolutely is. And where that problem comes in smaller departments, that they don't have a truck. So their engine's on the side of the ladder. I mean, the side of the engine.
Mm-hmm.
So your ladders are on the side. And, sometimes when I'm teaching, when was the last time you took that 24 off your engine? Well, we're an engine company. Well, what happens when you're it? They get complacent about the ladder. Yeah, we have ladders on our engine, but we never use them until you need to.
Until you need to, exactly. Well, I was in a class recently, and we were talking about I was doing when buildings change the rules class, and we were talking about large area structures. And the question I had was, who has ever done lifeline training? And, maybe like 2 people in the class, and it was a pretty big class, raised their hand. And I was like, who's got a policy on it? Who's ever used it? I'm sorry, who used it in on an incident? And like 2 hands went up, and then, who's trained on it? Some more hands went up, but who's trained on it in the last year? Hands went down. Who's got a policy? Hands went down. So, again, that's an evolution for a high risk, low frequency incident that in itself is high risk and low frequency.
Yeah.
And it requires a lot of things to go right if you do it right, and it's tough even when you do it right. You need to monitor submersion times. You need to make sure guys are giving proper reports. They make sure they're laying the line out properly, and not traversing areas that weren't coming back, that weren't traversed going in. There's lots of different ways to do it, if you're not doing it the day it's just like roof ventilation. The day of the fire should never be the first time that you actually do this, because it just puts you in a really, really bad place, and that's one of those things too. How many people are proficient with the power saws? How many people have ever used a power saw up on a roof, and do they know it, even if it's an acquired structure? Do they know what to do? Do they know the safety aspects of it? Do they know how to operate properly? They know about the circle of danger. Like, there's lots of different things that you have to be, concerned with. We could do a whole class on roof operations here, and we probably have before, but maybe not.
Yeah.
And keep that in mind.
Well, along the same line, and I'll use New York State as an example. New York State has a law that every firefighter has to be issued a PSS system, a bailout system. Mm-hmm. So they are all issued a bailout system. Even if the community only has 2-story houses in it or ranches, they're all issued it.
It's a good law.
Whenever I teach that, I always ask the question, when was the last time you trained on it? And you get everybody staring at you.
Yeah.
And then you go, well, we have to do it once a year. So I asked them, well, when was the last time you did it? Well, it was last September. So that's 11 months ago, say we're talking about right now. That was 11 months ago. When you're bailing out a window because you're about to burn to death, do you think practicing 11 months ago you can do that without making a mistake? You're going to remember how to do it with your gloves on? It's something else we do, and I'll get to that in a training section.
The stress.
Do everything with your gloves on. The stress. And you do your wraps the wrong way, or you load the PSS device the wrong way. and the brake is upside down and you go sailing down. Will you be able to do it when your life depends on it?
Yeah.
If you're not good at it during practice and training.
Right.
And I think that's all of our skills. When you're under the gun and you're scared that you're going to die, and your buddy next to you, you're scared he's going to die, will you be able to do it?
Mm. Yeah. Are you that good?
I think no, you're not that good if you're only training once a year.
Yeah. Well, that's the standard, right? You only have to do it once a year. I believe to qualify, you got to do 9 slides, right? 3 series of 3, right? I think one's on the windowsill. One is in the back. I don't remember it exactly, but I know one of them is the last one is you're hooded, you're facially obscured. So in North Hudson, what they do is instead of doing that once a year, the 3 times, they do it twice a year. And we have a tower that we use. But when you're not assigned to do it that particular month, you don't have to do your 3 slides. You have to deploy it at grade level and repack it. Everybody has to do that at least once a month if they're not actually up on the platform, which they do twice a year. So we double it, and it's about proficiency and confidence with the tools that you're working with. And really that when you look at training, that's really what your goals are: proficiency and confidence, right?
Right.
And proficiency and competence, I guess, are the same thing, right? Yeah. Competence and confidence.
And confidence. Confidence is also part of it. And that goes back to what I was just talking about raising a 35-foot ladder or actually doing it. You talk about training, like shift training or Monday night training in a volunteer firehouse or Sunday morning. Oh, you know what? I've stretched a 2.5, 100 times. We don't need to do it again. Are you good at it? Are you proficient and competent at it? Stretching a hose in a parking lot between pallets. Get an acquired structure. Understand, depending on the nozzle and the hose using, how to chase kinks. Some nozzles, the hose kinks easier. Some, I'm not an expert on different hose manufacturers and all that, but can you get around turns? Are you getting into a bedroom with, 2 twin beds, a dresser, or going up the stairs with a scissor staircase where you got to go up are you on the inside of the loop hose or you're on the outside? Yeah, you can do it. When you're at the front door, do you bring it from the side and then bend it to get it in the front door? Or do you flake it out so it goes straight and smoothly into the building and up the stairs? That takes practice. Just because Jim Duffy told you in a classroom that that's what you should do, are you going to remember at 2:00 in the morning when you just woke up and they're saying there are people are trapped and the truck company's going above the fire to search and you're the engine company and the fire's on the first floor? Are you going to get in there? You're going to get it kinked. Are you going to get it knotted under the dining room table as you stretch to the back? All that is practice, and that I call training. Classroom I call learning, and I try to separate them. I know how to do this. Well, when did you do it last? Well, in recruit school. You've been on a job 5 years. And in some places, that's the norm. You're a firefighter 1 and you're good to go. You don't have to recertify on firefighter 1, do you, in any state in the country?
Well, I know in I think it's Ohio or Illinois, you have to have CEUs to maintain your firefighter 1. We don't have that in New Jersey.
I think that's awesome.
And to be quite honest, I think it is. Listen, EMTs have to have CEUs.
Absolutely.
Why do firefighters not have to have CEUs? And even if you did it you had to have 18 CEUs over a 3-year period or something like that. You don't make it so it's unattainable. You just make it so that it is somewhere between unattainable and and ridiculously easy. to do. Yeah,
Yes.
to accomplish.
Well,
You know, but I believe Ohio is one. Maybe Illinois. There are definitely departments that have that. New Jersey's not one of them, and
I think that's great.
completely disagree.
Well, my department, it's not a state rule or county rules. Our department, everybody had to demonstrate competency in all the 1001 competencies, the JPRs. Now, you don't have to go, okay, today we're going to do SCBA, and you're going to do this, 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 this. Some of them you can combine. So raising a 24-foot ladder and then a roof ladder to cut a roof. You can do that. That's, the saw, that's raising the ladder, raising the roof, so you can combine them. You can do a live fire training in your tower and you meet multiple competencies, but you can't put the guys on the engine company just do engine work. They have to rotate through the ladder work. Or you could do them out, hey, you know what? Tomorrow's day shift, everybody's going to show me how to inspect SCBA. You know what I mean? Everybody does that. But it was a department requirement, and the company officers were responsible that their people met these requirements. But the quarterly drills we did as a department would cover a lot of them, work in low visibility. So you do live fire training and you've covered many things. But you're a firefighter one for life. So I go join the volunteer fire department. I'm a firefighter one. I'm going to just give you one more example. There was this guy who got on, actually was in the same recruit class I was in the academy. He never made a hydrant in his life. And he, good guy, small rural fire department, all farms and ranches and stuff like that. There's no hydrants. There's one in front of the firehouse so they could fill tankers. So he was in the academy and he was a fire too and never made a hydrant. I'm like, how is that possible? Even though his department doesn't have it, to get that certificate that says firefighter one, even if it's a dummy hydrant or you go to a neighboring community to wrap a hydrant and hook it up, they should have it. And you know what? Nobody was better than his department at getting water out of a pond. That's not what they did. But if you're going to go join a different department that has hydrants, and you say, I'm a fire one, and then at 2:00 in the morning, the first day you're there, your job is to make the hydrant.
Yeah.
Wallingford's hydrant's open the wrong way.
Is that right?
You have to turn it clockwise to open.
Oh,
and
that is the wrong way. Yeah. Maybe it's the right way.
It's one manufacturer, all their hydrants open that way. I don't remember which one it is, but they also, other towns have it, but a manufacturer makes it so it goes that way. And again, my habit, even after 30 years in Wallingford, from my baseline, it was counterclockwise. And every time I would start to go left and go, oops, got to go the other way.
Yeah. Oh, man.
That was hard for me to learn. Sure. I couldn't unlearn.
You got to unlearn the other thing.
Left is Lucy.
But then you go out onto mutual aid, and now you got to do it the other way.
Yeah. Or like the old days, different threads.
Yeah.
You better have the adapter for
that's not the old days for us. That's not the old days for us.
God,
New York City, Jersey City, and Hoboken use New York Standard thread. North Hudson and everybody else around us uses national standards. New York Core, that's what they use. We use national standards.
That's what used to happen on Long Island.
When we go to the Lincoln Tunnel, on the New Jersey side of the Lincoln Tunnel, there's a mark in the middle. New Jersey side of the Lincoln Tunnel, there is an adapter on the cabinets in the Lincoln Tunnel. Once you cross to the New York side, there is no adapter. It's New York City, New York's corporation, but there's an adapter inside the cabinet for us to put on. So if New York City is working on our side, they have to remove the adapter. If we're working on their side, we have to put the adapter on. It's the same with Jersey City and Hoboken. We have to use adapters for everything. Like our stuff fits theirs, but it's sloppy. Their stuff doesn't fit ours. So, you got that's different training. Listen, before we regionalized, we used to train with the other departments, and because the North Hudson departments, which became the North Hudson departments, we all had national standard thread, So, but we all used to use different things. There was manifolds, and there was 5-inch. There was 3-inch. There was water thieves. I mean, it was all that, and we had to familiarize everybody because we were always working together. We were dispatched out of the same place. It was, but you talk about 1001, right? NFPA 1001. We have a comprehensive training program in North Hudson. I was one of the ones that helped put it together with a guy named Marty Mandel and guy Mark Lorenz, a couple of chiefs, and it's extremely comprehensive. There are, I think, 4 forms that go with it. There's a T 11, 12, 13, and 14, I believe. T11 is recertification of 1001. So you have to recertify in 1001 every year, and that's part of our training schedule. They'll say,
Perfect.
Yeah, this month you're going to do ladders. This month you're going to, you're going to do a drill that has ladders, and you bring ladders up the hole. So you could, and then it would just say you can check off this box, and this box. Yep. So it would tell you what to check off on the 1011 form, right? 1012 was department SOP stuff. 1013 was things that mandated stuff. 1013, the form T13 was mandated stuff like bloodborne pathogens and all that sort of stuff. And T14 was for officers. They would have to like read the officer book, and then there was certain other things that they would do, right? But the other thing that you have to do that that's part of our training program is you have to document 6 hours of live SCBA training every year. How many departments actually do that? You have to document it, and on our form it would say, it'd be maybe like 12 of them, SCBA, and they would just have to put the date in of when it was done, which would then be backed up against the training form that was filled out for that particular day of training. So they would have to do that, and then there would also be on that form there would be the personal safety system slides. Slide on grade, slide on grade, slide on grade, slide on grade, slide from platform, because they would do it twice a year, and then the other 10 times it would be slide on grade. So we have really well thought out and well documented training. That doesn't mean it's the greatest training in the world. It just means it's set up very well. And again, then it's the sort of wild card of who's given the training, who is doing the training. Are they just going through the motions? And it runs the whole gamut.
Yes, sir.
But if you don't have a plan in place, you're guaranteed to pretty much fail. If you have a plan in place, at least you're going to wind up with some consistency, and you can identify places where the plan is failing. So that allows you now to figure out, well, we can need lesson plans for this, lesson plans for that. We need trainers here. Maybe we need new equipment. What are we doing? We have new equipment. Like we always had when we got new equipment. There were before you put it in service, there were 3 things that were done. There would be an SOP on it, training on it, on how to operate it, and a maintenance program for it that everybody had. I think that's how it worked out. I may be explaining it wrong, but every new piece of equipment requires those 3 things: training, maintenance, and operation. So every piece of equipment that we got would have that. And then once the piece went in service, those things would go into those, this is in the SOP book, this is in the training manual, and this is in the maintenance manual, so, that you have this ability to grab things, it's at your fingertips that, okay, well, we gotta, do the maintenance on this thing this month. It's our shift's turn, like, what do we got to do, because we haven't done it in 3 months or 6 months, because sometimes some certain tools, different maintenance things are assigned quarterly. It'll be every month.
Yes.
So the first platoon has it January, February, and March. But that means the fourth platoon has, by the time they get it again, they haven't had it in 9 months. So they have to then refamiliarize with the maintenance plan for it. Even though they've trained on it and operated and everything else, they have to familiarize with the maintenance plan. So it's a comprehensive. They're all mechanisms in place to make us better, to relieve liability, and just and to keep us safe.
Yeah, that sounds all super. But like you said, there's the dark horse in there. Is the guy just pencil whipping it? Because we, as much as I hate to admit it, there are some fire company officers that, here, tie me a clove hitch. Okay, you're good with ropes and knots for this month.
Good enough.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and that's unfortunate, and it's difficult to oversee that. And the bigger the department, the harder it is. You just have to have good officers. But then there's the other side, the smaller departments and the smaller volunteer departments. It's Monday night training. What are we going to train on tonight? Oh, let's do driver training. And they drive around town. They get Carvel ice cream on the way back, and then they go back. We did driver training. But one of the things you were talking about, well documented. We actually got cited by OSHA in Wallingford while I was there, not because we didn't do the training, because the guys weren't signing the form that they did it.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be checked off, but if they didn't sign the form, you could get cited for that. I was here. I did this.
Yeah.
Which I never knew. Well, we were doing so much training, but we weren't documenting it correctly.
You also have to put it in the house journal.
Yes.
Training should be in the house journal.
Although those are going away. Those are disappearing.
Mm.
They are disappearing throughout this country now with the computer systems that everybody puts everything in.
Yeah, house journal can be on the computer, but we did both.
Yeah.
We had a house journal, and even a deputy had a journal, but we also had another journal on the computer that was a little more informal in a way, a little more on guess on stuff. Hey, look at this is going on, that's going on. But the house journal will be where you put the alarms and the staffing and all that sort of thing, sick leave, everything else. But yeah, a lot of people are doing that on computers now, and as long as it's backed up on a server, is what it is.
But one of the problems with the computer, it's checklists. When you wrote in a journal, we did this. Firefighter Jones needs a little retraining on, I don't know, a certain knot or something. He has difficulty with. We'll practice for it. You can write all that stuff down. On the computer, I find that most people just check.
Yeah, the computer does a lot of that.
And
but again,
and that's unfortunate.
You can make forms that have comment sections and things like that.
You can do it right on the computer. At the bottom, it says comments. But did this, and that's unfortunate.
Well, that brings Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah,
you're still on the same subject.
Yeah, well, that brings you to documentation. Like if you're a company officer, you need to document everything properly. You never know when you're going to be called on the carpet or into a courtroom to defend your actions. And if you don't have them written down in the proper place and done in the proper way, then you didn't do them.
Yep. In departments that do AMS, they're better at that. Because when you do the run form or the PCR, patient care report, it's called today, if you didn't write it, you didn't do it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
If you didn't write his blood pressure was 120/80 or whatever, if you didn't write it down, you did not do it. I checked his pulse. If you didn't write it, you didn't do it. And in the will you fleece me and how attorneys at law could, Mr. Duffy, how come you didn't take a pulse of this patient when you came in? I did. Well, can you show me where it says that on a patient care report that you checked the pulse? Well, I did it because I always do it. Yeah, but it doesn't say that. It says you applied the cervical collar at this accident, but it doesn't say you took a pulse. So why would you write, I put a cervical collar on him, but not, I took his pulse? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where your liability is always high, but on EMS, it's much higher. And at fires, unless it goes wrong.
Yeah, I was going to
you know
say
what?
it's always higher until it gets higher on the Fireground.
Right. So if nothing goes wrong and you didn't document, nothing goes wrong, and for 5 years you haven't been doing shitty documentation.
Mm-hmm.
We stretched the line, we put the fire out. Until there's a life loss. The owner of the building says, and now people are suing because you fought the fire wrong, according to some expert he found.
Yeah.
So that's all coming up. I'd like to change gears a little bit.
Okay.
I want to talk to the instructors. And I want to talk about preparation, what makes you want to be an instructor, how to be ready, and how to deliver a good program, both hands-on and classroom. I personally think a newer firefighter, someone who's becoming more senior and he wants to get involved in teaching, he should start with the hands-on stuff. Most firefighters are comfortable with the hands-on stuff. So say you're assigned to a truck, you've started to saw a dozen times, now you have a new probie. A good way to start teaching or instructing is to take that probie and show them your K-12 or your circular saw or your roof saw or your chainsaw, and go over it step by step with the probie. And eventually you'll get more comfortable doing it hands-on and maybe doing more advanced stuff. And as you get better at that and you're more comfortable in front of groups, getting in front of the classroom will make you a better instructor. But preparation. I remember the first class I taught in a firefighter, one class I was still a firefighter. I was shitting in my pants, although I could talk on a truck room floor with anybody how to do it.
Yeah.
But doing a recruit class, I was petrified. But I made sure I was doing SCBA that night, but I knew every piece of the SCBA. Every single piece, anything that can go wrong with it. And so when I did the class, I was more comfortable, but I was still really, really nervous. So you have to build your skills. And as part of this discussion, don't teach above your head. Say the chief wants you to do ropes and knots. You know what? I suck. I can't, and I'm not talking about me, although now that I'm retired, I can't tie a knot. But I was really good at knots. I could do anything. So that's a subject that I should teach. SCBA maintenance, I could do. Hazmat. On the shift, sometimes I had to do hazmat. I'm not the person who should be talking hazmat. At incidents, I would park one of my lieutenants right next to me. Dave, what should I do? That's exactly what I did. He was brilliant at hazmat and chemistry. So you know what? Someone else is going to have to take care of that company because you're sitting right next to me so I don't kill somebody. Yeah, I could look in the books and say, okay, we should be doing this, but he'll just recite it off his head, and he knows. So you got to trust your people, and you have to know what your ability allows. Any thoughts on that? Do you agree with me that starting hands-on is a better way to start? And it doesn't have to be, but that's where I was. I think most firefighters are more comfortable with the hands-on.
Totally. I think that you need, the preliminary foundation, of, this is what we're going to do. This is why we know who, what, when, why, and how. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do it. And this is, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to do it. And I'm going to tell you what we did.
Right. I'm going to add one thing to that. Tell them what we're going to do it together, and then they do it on their own.
And then have them tell you what they did.
Right.
Yeah.
I do, we do, you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
and it works.
Yeah, I think you have to have structure, no matter what it is, but that structure should be consistent too. Especially when you have a newer firefighter, structure, and also in the scheduling. Look, we're gonna train this time every day unless something else is going on. And then we're gonna do this every day unless something else going on. It's hard, it's hard to do, but I think the most important attribute of a trainer is to give a shit. If you care, everybody will know. Everybody can tell. Everybody can tell when you don't. Even a brand new guy can tell when the guy teaching him just doesn't care. He's just checking a box, and he's just going through it because he has to, and he's obviously not motivated at all. And that's bad for the student as well. But I think that's one of the most important things. As we said, competency, confidence, and caring. There's a different three C's than people normally put out there, right? Caring is really important. And you know what the other thing is too? Learn how to light a fire under somebody's ass. Know how to do that. You guys did that for me when we did those videos. Out in Connecticut. You lit my fire. And you have to learn how to do that. And the other thing is, if you're the trainee, you have to be looking for that. You have to be looking for something that is going to reignite your passion. I mean, for me, I'm really fortunate because I've had a lot of people reignite my passion throughout my career. And you would say, well, listen, you're an author, you've done this, you've done that. How, you needed to reignite your passion. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody gets stale once in a while, and I've been lucky enough to have some great mentors reignite my passion. Like yesterday, Jerry Tracy, Stephen Mosser.
How can you?
These guys in the city reignited my passion. I taught it, and I didn't really talk about this, but I was humbled and honored to be asked to teach at the Joey D conference this past weekend. And you want to talk about motivated people and people on a mission and an unbelievable foundation. And I got to listen to the story of what happened there on Black Sunday. And I've heard it before, but this was the first time for me that the three surviving guys were there at a round table. They were there, and they were talking about it. And that's what a lot of other people said. They've seen two of them together, one at one, but very few had seen three at one time, and not for a long time. So that was really, really good. They also had a guy there doing lithium-ion batteries. I don't remember his name, but he was really good. He was FDNY hazmat guy. And then, of course, I got the distinction and the great honor of following Frank Lieb, which is not the easiest thing to do. Frank Lieb did a great thing about safety and being battle ready. And I did my strategic decision making, and I have to be quite honest. I was, I was a little bit. I felt a little off my game, a little intimidated. Just to be in the arena that I was in, and asked to speak there. I mean, it worked out okay. I think I did very well, but I could feel a little bit out of my element, so to speak. And the one thing they had the night before, they had the lectures. They had a thing where that book came out, We Saved New York, or They Saved New York. They Saved New York. And they had a dinner, and they had a ton of old retired New York City guys that were featured in the book that, some of them, I've heard of, some of them I didn't, but they were all there to sign the book, and Mike Dugan was there, and Salka was there. And, but I got to meet and talk to, like God, Louis Andrade and Valenzano from Ladder 31, and Eddie Kilduff was there, and Tommy Richardson was there. There was just it was an awesome experience. And again, reignited my passion, and that's what you got to do as a trainer. It's your job is to reignite other people's passion, but in order to do that, you got to know how to look for places to reignite your own. And here's the plug: the FDIC is the place to do that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're absolutely correct.
Right? See how I tied that right
It
in?
always recharges my batteries. You spoke about Chief Richardson. I was teaching that. Actually, you got it for next year. You're teaching at the Suffolk County Fire Chiefs Scholarship Fund.
I am?
Yeah, you are. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I hooked you up with them, and he told me you're going to do it, and Tom Merrill's going to do it next year.
Nice. Thank you.
But anyway, I'm teaching the class, and Chief Richardson walks in. I go, I'm teaching in 100% volunteer community on Eastern Long Island, about 250 people, and Chief Richardson's sitting in the back. So first break, I go up to Cook, and I talk to him. He's still a volley in Yaphank, I think, in New York, and still into it. He comes and shows up at a class I'm doing about house fires. Chief of the biggest fire department in the world. It's just like, it's mind boggling. You sit there and you're thinking like, wow, what's he going to think? But really, my target is the rest of the students. I can't worry about him, but I was, like you said, truly honored to speak to him on the breaks and afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And, he had some kind words about the class, but really, the arena you're with is going to make you better all the time. The only problem is when something like that happens, I have no saliva for the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, I didn't have saliva in this class, and I couldn't. I was trying to find the water gun, the water. Then my highlighter, I was using somebody else's, and I didn't know how to use it. And every time I was hitting it, I was blacking the screen out, and I was like, oh, so I didn't have the opportunity to use. You have the laser. I couldn't find the laser.
Yeah.
But I didn't. But because I only had 90 minutes, I couldn't stop, get my laser, put this laser in, and so it was,
I'm sure you did fine. You wouldn't have been
on my
invited there
standards.
if
It
you
was a
weren't
bit of a
kidding.
train wreck, but I thought it was well received. I got some very good reviews on it. Nobody said it sucked. Maybe they didn't want to tell me it did, but I was very honored because I looked at.
Trust me, Dugan would tell you if you sucked.
Yeah, I'm sure he would. I just saw him yesterday too, and I looked at the and actually a few people there had heard about the conference that I saw yesterday at the high rise thing, and said they heard heard your talk went really, really well. So that's good. I guess you're your biggest critic, I guess.
If you're doing it right, there are a lot of people think they're perfect and they're great every time.
Yeah.
And this is something I want to discuss about.
I don't think
watch your egos. If you're not nervous every time you speak a little bit, you're not doing it right or you don't care. I always have a little bit of the jitters, and I won't say, I'm sweating or anything, but I have to feel the audience out. I have to see that I'm connecting. Once I connect with them, it just rolls.
Yeah.
But every room you speak in, if you're not a little uncomfortable, to me, it says you don't care. Or you just have an ego too big that you probably shouldn't be doing. Maybe what you do is great, but you know what? You got to care. Like you said, you have to care. And I see some instructors as I travel, and it's all about them. And that always disappoints me. It's, yes, I want to do good. I want to be proud of myself, but you're there for your students. And if you're worried about how this sets you up for your next class or your next book or your next video, that's a problem. You got to look at your students. You got to help your students. You got to make them succeed, at least understand and make a light bulb go on of the heads. They could disagree with what I'm saying, and I'm okay with that, because if it works in my department and has for me in the past, it may not work for them where they are. But at least they're thinking and they're responding, and they appreciate your time. I learn from them many times, as I know you do. But you got to leave the egos out of it. You got to go out there, share your knowledge. and be honest about the knowledge you have. Don't make up stuff. Don't tell other people's war stories. Although I always tell one of yours. I always tell the one about the Speedy dry in the compartment.
That's good stuff.
I always tell her, I said, this is not my war story, but this is so important. You have to be ready. Don't leave it for the next shift.
That's right.
I think that is a great lesson, you know, and I do share that one a lot. And most of the time when I share war stories, it's where I screwed up, not where I was the hero. It's where I made a bad decision and something bad happened because of my bad decision. And those are the ones I share.
Yeah, it's okay to make mistakes. You're an instructor. It's okay to make mistakes, but you know,
right. But I don't want them making the same mistake. I don't want them making the same mistake I made.
Right.
I usually use it in size up things. And I probably told you this story. I pulled up a house early in the morning. I was a young lieutenant, and the woman goes, "Grandpa's downstairs. Grandpa's downstairs." And it was a pretty good basement and first floor fire. So send all the resources to the basement. Couple minutes later, maybe 6 minutes later, the truck says, "We got a victim on the first floor." So, you know, they pulled him out. He was in a wheelchair. Unfortunately, he expired. What I learned from that, it was a mother-daughter. You know what a mother-daughter house is?
Yeah.
You know, where the in-laws. So she lived on the second floor. She woke up, her smoke alarm was going off. Her bedroom was filled with smoke. She ran down the stairs. She met me at the curb, screaming, "Grandpa's downstairs, Grandpa's downstairs." So she's in a panic. In her mind, she just woke up in her bedroom, Grandpa's downstairs. Me, I heard Grandpa's downstairs and assumed. What I recommend from that incident is where. Tell me exactly where Grandpa is.
Yeah.
Point to the room. Don't just assume.
Yeah.
I knew what she
Your
meant.
downstairs and her downstairs are two different things.
Right. Because, again, she woke up in the middle of the night and she met me on the street, downstairs. Well, Grandpa lives downstairs in her mind. To me, I know everything. I'm a young lieutenant. I'm going downstairs. So it's just a valuable lesson for me. I've always asked where anytime anybody told me somebody was in there.
Cool.
So I'd like to move on to FDIC a little bit, and I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but I'm going to tell our listeners the Mikey show, Mike Galliano and Mike Dugan, they do a podcast much like this one. They did one with David Rhodes and Diane about how to become a speaker at FDIC. It's not mystical. If you have something to share, there are suggestions that they give in that podcast. So if you Google it or you go to Firehouse and you try to find the archives, it'll help you get there. But don't start at FDIC. Start somewhere sooner. And again, when you get there, leave your ego at the door. Just like any other classroom you're presenting. FDIC has been a wonderful experience for me. I always sweat whether I'm going to get picked again this year or next year or whatever. It's not a given for anybody. And make sure you bring something that's worth sharing. And, you know, watch that podcast. It'll help you.
Yes, absolutely.
And, you know, in conclusion, for instructors and people hiring instructors, make sure it's someone who's done what you're hiring them to teach about. And again, I take that out of the shift stuff because the company officers are going to be assigned to do that training, whether he's actually used a bailout system in a real incident. You know, we all have. So those things. But if you're doing a class, make sure it's something you're familiar with. I would never do a high-rise class. I would never do a hazmat class. You know, and if you're given something you're not comfortable with, study, look, read, talk to people who are good at it. Make sure to have all the answers, and you won't. Someone's going to ask you a question you don't know. You know what? Here's my card. Here's my number. I'm going to find out for you. Send me an email, and I'll send you when I find out. Like farce. I know this much about farce. You know, so go find out and give them the information you can. And I know you do that. Any more about teaching, instruction, or training that you'd like to discuss?
Um, I think you kind of hit it on the head. If you're going to teach something, learn everything about it. Um, don't make stuff up, um, and don't wing it. I think that's important, and be genuine and approachable. But yeah, yeah, you hit that on the head right there, Duff.
Yeah, I gotta agree with. And one thing I like to add, and I know you have it, and I know I have it: passion. Be passionate. Be excited when you talk and walk around the room. Don't stand there and read slides. Be excited. It will translate to them being excited. Not all of them. Some people are like, yeah, this guy's an asshole. And that's okay. Everybody's not going to like what I have to say. And I'm okay with that. Before we say goodnight, I want to say one thing. Let's see if I can get this in here. That's my dad. This is Veterans Day is next week. My dad served in World War II, and he served during Korea, not in Korea. He actually was in Yugoslavia during the Korean War. But you know what? This country is awesome, and I never served. I served in a different capacity in the fire service, but the people who serve, the men and women who serve in our armed forces are awesome. And I am so grateful for them, and their families paid the price for them to go away. Even if they come back in one piece, they had to give them up and share them with us for a while. My dad, that I just showed you his picture, my oldest brother was born while he was deployed. You know, and I think about that. My mom was alone when my oldest brother was born because he was deployed on a heavy cruiser. So anyway, you know, if you see a veteran, or if you know veterans, say thank you to them. I am so thrilled that we have people willing to do that. I know less and less people are willing to do that, but I think it's really, really important and really important for you guys to say thank you.